because I played a Willie Nelson song. I can't do those Willie Nelson songs. What was it called?
Like Grandpa.
Granddad or something.
I'm my own grandpa.
Yeah.
Remember that song? The Willie Nelson.
I've
I'm my own
been listening to
grandpa.
Willie for years. I never heard that song.
Yeah, my dad has played it before. Okay, we are in Zechariah chapter 6, starting at verse 9. This is a culminating vision. It's like a success. The thing about celebration and success. Because Babylon had been defeated, Cyrus has returned the captives to Jerusalem. So the temple is being rebuilt, and the foundation is being laid for the future by cleansing the priesthood and the people, and by recognizing the joint leadership of Joshua the high priest and Zerubbabel, the direct descendant of King David and progenitor of the branch. The prophet Haggai lights a fire under the people of Jerusalem, urging them to build the house. Remember that? We read about them trying, and then Zechariah comes along too, and these Nehemiah and Haggai and those guys are getting the temple started, so then somewhere in there, Zechariah writes this book. It's meant to be an encouragement to God's people to keep with the work, keep with what you're doing, don't give up. It took years to do the work. So we did Zechariah's first visions. There were 8 visions, and we read each of those visions. And now we're going to see 2 interludes and some closing articles that bring us through chapter 8. So the interludes, they each have their own kind of identity with them. You'll see how they go. Then we're going to go to the second half of Zechariah. So the first half of Zechariah, which is going to end when we get to the closing oracle. Then the second half, they think that may have been written like 50 years later. It's completely separate. It's very separate from the first part. And I'll describe to you some of the ways that the second half is very different than the first half. So we're going to finish up in Zechariah starting at chapter 6, verse 9. We're going to do the 2 interludes and the closing oracles before we start the second half. Okay? So we're in Zechariah chapter 6, verse 9. I want to get back here. I have a paper that tells me which slide I'm going to. Oh, there it is. 45. Gotta remember slide 45. That's where we stop. Okay. The word of the Lord came to me. Take silver and gold from the exiles, Heldai, Tobijah, and Jediah, who have arrived from Babylon. Go the same day to the house of Josiah, son of Zephaniah. Take the silver and gold and make a crown, and set it on the head of the high priest, Joshua, son of Jozadak. Now, is there any problem with that? Is the priest supposed to be wearing a crown? Who wears a crown?
The king.
The king. So why is Zechariah telling the priest to wear a crown? Let's keep that question in mind. Verse 12. Tell him this is what the Lord Almighty says. Here is the man whose name is the branch. And he will branch out from his place and build the temple of the Lord. It is he who will build the temple of the Lord, and he will be clothed with majesty and will sit and rule on his throne, and he will be a priest on his throne. That's a little weird. Priest and king. Is that a foreshadowing?
Mm-hmm.
Who do we see that's priest and king?
Jesus.
And he is the branch. When we saw that in the first section of Zechariah, that the branch is this descendant, the Messiah that's going to be coming. So here we see how the Jews were familiar with this idea of having a priest king. They didn't have Jesus yet, right? So this is like, for them, this would be foreshadowing. For us, it's like old news. But for them, this is the first time they've heard this idea, what you're going to have a priest king. So the Hebrew word for priest king is not the same as the Hebrew word for crown is not the same that was used for the high priest's turban. The high priest had a turban that they wore. So this word is crown. It's not the turban. So it's not the same thing. And the royal crown of the high priest foreshadows the goal and consummation of prophecy the crowning and reign of the Messianic king priest. We see that in Revelations 9:12, Psalms 110, and Hebrews 7. So we're familiar with that, but for them, that would have been the first time this idea came up that there was going to be a priest king.
Revelation 9:12 and what?
9:12, Psalm 110:4, and Hebrews 7, 1-3. And there will be harmony between the two. The crown will be given to Heldai, Tobijah, Jedediah, and Hin, son of Zephaniah, as a memorial in the temple of the Lord. Those who are far away will come and help to build the temple of the Lord, and you will know that the Lord Almighty has sent me to you. This will happen, oh, that big word. This will happen if you diligently obey the Lord your God. That if word, it gets in the way all the time, doesn't it? So Zechariah understood Zerubbabel as the forerunner of the branch, the future Davidic king who was going to appear and fulfill Israel's destiny. The symbolic coronation of both Josiah and Zerubbabel, with their crowns placed in the temple. That symbolically joins the role of the priest and the king in the coming branch, in the temple together. So we, of course, see Jesus is both the king and the priest, and is seated at the right hand of God, reigning eternally as priest king. But that's not yet what they've had. This is the foreshadowing of it. For them, they would have said, well, that's really a weird thing. Why is he doing that? Connecting the priest with the king, and then having it be in the temple. Both their crowns are in the temple. That's weird. Okay, on to more weirdness. The next one is on fasting. The next interlude, chapter 7, verses 1-14. All 8 of Zechariah's visions occur in a single night. In the 2nd year of Darius, on the 24th day of Shabbat, the 11th month. That's what he says. That would have been February 15th, 519 BC. So those 7 visions that we saw were all in one night. Now he concludes the vision with a series of oracles and sayings on a variety of topics, and he's going to address now fasting. So let's see what fasting has to do with it. In the 4th year of King Darius, the word of the Lord came to Zechariah on the 4th day of the 9th month, the month of Kislev. The people of Bethel had sent Sherezer and Regem-melech together with their men to entreat the Lord by asking the priests of the house of the Lord Almighty and the prophets, should I mourn and fast in the 5th month as I've done for so many years? Now, John, isn't that a curious question? Who cares? Right?
No.
Isn't that a weird question? Should I mourn and fast in the 5th month as I've done for... So what changed that you think you should not do it anymore?
If they give a priest king, they would, and the prayers would be answered.
Yeah, something like that. Well, in the 5th month, that would be when they would fast to commemorate the burning of the temple and the important buildings. And now they've rebuilt Jerusalem, they rebuilt the temple, they've put back the important buildings. So do you still fast on the 5th month? Because now everything's back. That's the question. The people, pardon?
This is crazy.
This is crazy. Verse 4. Let's get crazier. Watch it get crazier. Then the word of the Lord Almighty came to me. Ask all the people of the land and the priest, when you fasted and mourned in the 5th and 7th month. By the way, the 7th month was when Gedaliah was assassinated. I don't know if you remember, he was the ruler in charge at the very end when Jerusalem fell, and he was killed. So that was that. The 7th month was for that. When you fast and mourn in the 5th and 7th month for the past 70 years, was it really for me that you fasted? And when you were eating and drinking, were you not feasting for yourselves? Are these not the words the Lord proclaimed through the earlier prophets when Jerusalem and surrounding towns were at rest and prosperous, and the Negev and the western foothills were settled? Another month that they fasted was on the 10th month. And on the 10th month, it was the beginning of when Nebuchadnezzar took siege of Jerusalem. So what Zechariah is saying on God's behalf is, who were you fasting for? Does the destruction of the Jerusalem, or does the Nebuchadnezzar siege, or the death of Gedaliah, is that something God ordered them to have a fast for? Yeah, so it's a weird.
Makes some sense, really.
Yeah, that's why he's asking the question, who are you doing the fast for? Verse 8, and the word of the Lord came again to Zechariah. This is what the Lord Almighty said. Administer true justice, show mercy and compassion to one another. Do not oppress the widow or the fatherless, the foreigner or the poor. Do not plot evil against each other. If you were going to underline a verse in your Bible, this would be a really good one, because these are the 4 tests of faithful covenant keeping. They were social, moral, and ethical commands. Administer justice, mercy and compassion to one another. Do not oppress the widow or the fatherless, the foreigner or the poor, and do not plot evil against one another. That's what you would do if you were keeping God's covenant. Those are things you would not do if you were keeping God's covenant. Verse 11, but they refused to pay attention. Stubbornly, they turned their backs and covered their ears. They made their hearts as hard as flint and would not listen to the law or to the words that the Lord Almighty had sent by his Spirit through the earlier prophets. So the Lord Almighty was very angry. When I called, they did not listen. So when they called, I would not listen, says the Lord Almighty. I scattered them with a whirlwind among all the nations where they were strangers. The land they left behind them was so desolate that no one traveled through it. This is how they made the pleasant land desolate. So God is explaining, do they need to fast those times? His answer is, who are you fasting for? So if you want to have a fast to bring yourself closer to God, go for it. But don't pretend that God is commanding you to fast and you just have to obey it. It's something you do for him. Okay, closing oracles. So this last part are oracles. The oracles and sayings were gathered up and appended to Zechariah's visions as chapters 7 and 8. So those were pieces that were gathered up and just put at the end of it. They addressed the fasting, the preaching of former prophets, and all this kind of stuff. And it's good material, but it doesn't really connect very well with the first part, and it's actually separate from the second part. So let's go on to chapter 8. So this is a little bit of a loosey-goosey place. I can't really figure out how it connects. Some people actually think there may have been 50 years between the writing of the first half and the second half of Zechariah, and they think that some of these that are kind of in the middle were writings that occurred in between. So chapter 8, verse 1, the word of the Lord Almighty came to me. This is what the Lord Almighty says. I am very jealous for Zion. I am burning with jealousy for her. This is what the Lord says. I will return to Zion and dwell in Jerusalem. Then Jerusalem will be called the faithful city, and the mountain of the Lord Almighty will be called the holy mountain. This is what the Lord Almighty says. Once again, men and women of ripe old age will sit in the streets of Jerusalem, each of them with cane in hand because of their age. The city streets will be filled with boys and girls playing there. This is what the Lord Almighty says. It may seem marvelous to the remnant of this people at that time, but will it seem marvelous to me, declares the Lord Almighty? This is what the Lord Almighty says. Now, wait a minute. Did you catch that? The Lord Almighty says, and back there, the word Lord Almighty, the bottom, the Lord Almighty. So there are going to be 10 promises and blessings that each begin with, this is what the Lord Almighty says. It's going to be 10 of them. This is what the Lord Almighty says. I will save my people from the countries of the east and the west. I will bring them back to live in Jerusalem. They will be my people, and I will be faithful and righteous to them as their God. That's covenant terminology right there, isn't it? The intimate fellowship we have with God.
Where's the if?
Pardon?
Where's the if? If they.
Well, keep listening. Verse 9. This is what the Lord Almighty says. Now hear these words. Let your hands be strong so that the temple may be built. This is also what the prophets said who were present when the foundation was laid for the house of the Lord Almighty. Before that time, there were no wages for people or hire for animals. No one could go about their business safely because of their enemies, since I had turned everyone against their neighbor. But now I will not deal with the remnant of this people as I did in the past, declares the Lord Almighty. The seed will grow well. The vine will yield its fruit, the ground will produce its crops, and the heavens will drop their dew. I will give all these things as an inheritance to the remnant of this people. By the way, those things, your seed grow well, vine yield, your ground will produce crops, and the heavens will rain. That's the opposite of the 4 curses. So in other words, what he's saying here is going to reverse the curses. You do right, you move into the land, you build my temple, you do these things, we're going to set it up again, and you follow after me, and these things are going to go well for you. I will give all these things as an inheritance to the remnant of this people, just as you, Judah and Israel, have been a curse among the nations. So I will save you, and you will be a blessing. Do not be afraid, but let your hands be strong. This is what the Lord Almighty says. Just as I had determined to bring disaster on you and showed you no pity with your ancestors, angered me, says the Lord Almighty, so now I have determined to do good again to Jerusalem and Judah. Do not be afraid. These are the things you are to do. Speak the truth to each other and render true and sound judgment in your courts. Do not plot evil against each other, and do not love to swear falsely. I hate all this, declares the Lord. So he's reversing the curses. He's taking the things that had been cursed on the land and with the people, he's backing it back up, reeling it back up. Does it sound like our politics these days? Mm-hmm. So do not be afraid. These are the things you are to do. Speak the truth to each other. Render true and sound judgment in your courts. Do not plot evil against each other. Do not love to swear falsely. I think those opposite things are some of the things we see currently. Mm-hmm. The word of the Lord Almighty came to me. This is what the Lord Almighty says. Okay, here's about the fast. The fast of the 4th, 5th, 7th, and 10th months will become joyful and glad occasions and happy festivals for Judah. Therefore, love, truth, and peace. So what's he saying? So you have a fast to remember the fall of Jerusalem. So now, go ahead and have your fast, but instead, make it for the rebuilding of Jerusalem. You remember that it fell, and now you've got it rebuilt. He's saying turn it to the positive. Turn it to something that you can do well. It doesn't have to be a sad time. It can be a time of remembrance, and remember how good it is, and make it be joyful. This is what the Lord Almighty says. Many peoples and the inhabitants of many cities will yet come, and the inhabitants of one city will go to another and say, let us go at once to entreat the Lord and seek the Lord Almighty. I myself am going, and many people and powerful nations will come to Jerusalem to seek the Lord Almighty and entreat him. That is what the Lord Almighty says. In those days, 10 people from all languages and nations will take firm hold of one Jew by the hem of his robe and say, let's go with you because we have heard that God is with you. Now, is that the way it is for them now in the time that he's writing it? They've been rejected and outcast, and they're out amongst all these places. So Zechariah is drawing this picture that someday they're going to say, hey, look, there's a Jew, someone that God loves. They're going to grab a hold of him. Now, do we see that today? No? Was there a time when Jews were doing pretty well, like when Jesus' time?
Yeah. I think this is talking about Passover to come, isn't it? Talking about the Passover and then Jesus to come?
I think what it's talking about, where it says here, let us go at once to entreat the Lord and seek the Lord Almighty. I myself am going, and many peoples and powerful nations will come to Jerusalem to seek the Lord. I thought when we read in the New Testament with Jesus going, and you see him describing all the people coming to Jerusalem to celebrate the festivals, then they would go back out to the areas that they actually lived. Not everyone lived in Jerusalem, but pretty much that whole country would come for pilgrimage festivals. Even those people who had, when we read Esther, there was Mordecai and Esther that were living outside of the land, but they still seem to have been following at least some of their Jewish practices. So don't you imagine that those people in other places that have been long gone would go visit Jerusalem? Shoot, John and Eve went to Jerusalem.
I'm ready to go.
Are you guys Jewish at all? No.
Well, yeah.
People go there now as a place to go. Why do we want to go there?
Closer to God.
Is God there, not here?
Well, he's everywhere, but the history is there.
The history's there, right?
Yeah.
So isn't that what we're doing when we go? Or many people will come to Jerusalem to seek the Lord Almighty and to entreat Him. It's like that's where the landing zone was, or that's where.
It's like, we're reading it, but it's like you bring pictures to class so we can visualize it. I went to Israel to visualize.
Yeah,
That was my visualization, is that?
yeah.
Whatever.
It's
But
where
yeah.
the stuff actually happened. It's not just a story. Yeah,
In
Marvin.
King Solomon's time, it was an impressive kingdom that foreigners would come just to see how things worked and why it was so good. And,
Yeah. So we have the time of Solomon.
yeah,
We have then, and that's after this, right? So, right?
no.
No, it'd be before this. So then,
Quite a while.
they go to exile. Then they come back into the land. When's the next time that we see people coming to Jerusalem? It'd be somewhere around the time of Christ, right? So just before that, people were coming to pilgrimage festivals to Jerusalem. It was a pretty booming city. Had the support of the Romans because the Romans liked the money that brought in. So they really didn't have political control. And then when they tried to fight back against the Romans, that's when the temple was erased again in 70 AD, right? Okay. Do we see any other foreshadowing? Is there another time when people went back to Jerusalem?
1948.
48.
Became a nation. 1940s after the Holocaust and all of that stuff. And then, now, did a lot of people come back? A lot of Jews?
Some,
Not at first.
Not all of them.
A lot of Jews stayed where they are, right? Because they, just like happened in the other time. In the other time, like with Mordecai and Esther, they were out in these other lands and places, and they had made homes and families there, and many generations. Remember, Israel was 187 years out before and then the others had 70 years that they were out before they came back into the land. When they came back, it was all disheveled and a mess. It took a while to build it up again. Yeah. So this is a kind of event that is occurring frequently. So if you read this in 1950, you might have said, that's just what happened. That just happened here. When we look forward, could we see a time that that's going to happen again? What do you think?
Apparently it's happening right now.
it's recurring now.
As persecution increases against Israel, they're moving back.
That's interesting. As persecution increases, they're moving back. That's interesting. Go ahead. What?
The buzz.
Oh,
There's a buzz someplace.
It's over that way.
okay. So eschatological future, we can see this foreshadows events that occurred before 70 AD during the time of Christ, sometime in there, where people were coming to Jerusalem to worship. We know that in the end times, we know in our time, 1948, when Israel became a nation again, and we also know that in the end times, Jerusalem is going to exist and there's going to be a people there. Is there any country older than, any city older than Jerusalem? Do you know?
What about, where, Jonah went? He didn't wanna go. Isn't that
Nineveh.
supposed to be? Yeah, isn't that supposed to be? I thought, I just read something about it.
Is it still a place, Nineveh?
I think so.
I think some of those historic places we can find on the map, but as far as being an actual place that is thriving or living, I don't know that there's very many of them. It seems pretty unusual to me. After all these years, they still have the nation of Israel.
None of the people of that time are still, the people groups and their religions are all passed away except Israel.
Mm-hmm.
This seems to be doing a foreshadowing like of yet to come.
Zechariah 9-14 differs dramatically from Zechariah 1-8. Zechariah 1-8 is a distinct and clear identifiable historical context, the rebuilding of the second temple. Whereas in Zechariah 9-14, it's not a single mention of the second temple being rebuilt. Zechariah, Joshua, Zerubbabel, and the Persian king Darius appear prominently in Zechariah 1-8, whereas they do not set foot into Zechariah 9:14. We don't see that at all. Zechariah 1-8 displays 8 prominent visions explained to the prophet by an interpreting angel, whereas visions are absent in Zechariah 9-14. And the rather peaceful setting of chapters 1-8 transforms into one of judgment and war in chapters 9-14. Finally, Zechariah's visions in 1-8 typically open by providing context for the vision itself, whereas Zechariah 9 opens with a pronouncement, an oracle. This opening repeats in Zechariah 12:1 and at the beginning of Malachi, suggesting that the three are somehow linked, even though Malachi's historical setting is later, around the time when Ezra and Nehemiah were in Jerusalem in the mid-400s. So we kind of see this blurring of not knowing exactly where in time the second half of Zechariah comes into play. It seems much later than the first 8 chapters and more in line with the time of Malachi, which we'll be doing Malachi next. Zechariah 9-14 is considered eschatological or foreshadowing end times when God's plan for Israel and for humanity will come to fulfillment, a time when God will judge the nations and his own people, a time of purging and repentance, of judgment and salvation. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
So let's look at Zechariah 9:1. A prophecy. Okay, let's stop right there. Did you know, I did not know this, that the word prophecy in Hebrew is masah, and that it can be translated oracle or burden or prophecy.
Wow.
Now, we think of prophecy. What do you think of prophecy? Like a foretelling, like a future event. So, for prophecy. So, but what does oracle make you think of? To me, it's like you're just making a command. To me, an oracle is like Eve, I'm telling you that shirt is beautiful. You know, I'm making like a statement,
It's a statement.
like a strong statement. It's kind of like what I think of. I don't know what you think of. And then burden, though.
Yeah.
Burden. Now, are all prophecies a burden? Because burden seems like it to have a negative context. I guess in a way it is. And
Yeah, because it's something you
Depends on
don't
who
know.
reading it.
yeah, and you don't know what it is.
Yeah, that's a burden upon you because you don't know.
Yeah.
You wonder, you guess.
So FYI, when you see in the Old Testament the word prophecy, that Hebrew word is MASS-SAH, Masah. When you see that word, it could be translated prophecy, oracle, or burden. So I would imagine if he's talking about bad news, I'd consider it burden. Bad news. I got bad news for you. God has placed the prophets, placed on them a message that they may not like, but they must deliver it nonetheless. That's what makes it a burden. Zechariah's burden focuses first on the land of Hadrach, that is the land of the north, Aram or Syria of today, with its capital of Damascus, along with Hamath, Tyre, and Sidon. All had been Judah's traditional enemies. Aram had made an alliance with other northern kingdoms with the northern kingdom of Israel to attack Judah at the time of King Ahaz and the prophet Isaiah. Tyre and Sidon had been trading partners with both Israel and Judah, but Tyre's interests were purely self-centered and commercial. So the prophet Ezekiel is going to talk about Tyre. Let's read here this prophecy. A prophecy. The word of the Lord is against the land of Hadrach and will come to rest on Damascus. For the eyes of all people and all the tribes of Israel are on the Lord, and on Hamath too, which borders it, and on Tyre and Sidon, though they are very skillful. Tyre has built herself a stronghold. She has heaped up silver like dust and gold like the dirt of the streets. But the Lord will take away her possessions and destroy her power on the sea, and she will be consumed by fire. Ezekiel talked about that when we read Ezekiel. Let's take a look at Ezekiel 28. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, say to the ruler of Tyre, this is what the sovereign Lord says. In the pride of your heart you say, I am a god. I sit on the throne of God in the heart of the seas. But you are a mere mortal and not a god. Though you think you are as wise as a god, are you wiser than Daniel? Is no secret hidden from you? By your wisdom and understanding you have gained wealth for yourself and amassed gold and silver in your treasuries. By your great skill in trading you have increased your wealth, and because of your wealth your heart has grown proud. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Remember when we read Ezekiel and he went around all the kingdoms that were around Israel and talked about their condemnation? This is that portion of that. Because you think you are wise as a God, I'm going to bring foreigners against you, the most ruthless of nations. They will draw their swords against your beauty and wisdom and pierce your shining splendor. They will bring you down to the pit, and you will die a violent death in the heart of the seas. Will you then say, I am God, in the presence of those who kill you? You will be but a mortal, not a God, in the hands of those who slay you. You will die the death of the uncircumcised at the hands of foreigners. I have spoken, declares the sovereign Lord. Nebuchadnezzar spent 13 years trying to defeat Tyre. Tyre had the city on the mainland and an island off the coast. So Alexander the Great, what he did, he came in and demolished the city, and then he built a little path to get over to the island that was Tyre. And so that's how he conquered it. So that red line was the wall that was built around the entire island, so you couldn't get to it by sea. And so they came across, he put the heaping rocks and stuff from what they had demolished and made a pathway. Now it looks like this. What used to be an island, separate, completely separate, is no longer separate. Back to Zechariah. Zechariah 9, verse 5. Ashkelon will see it and fear. Gaza will writhe in agony. Ekron too, for her hope will wither. Gaza will lose her king, and Ashkelon will be deserted. A mongrel people will occupy Ashdod, and I will put an end to the pride of the Philistines. I will take the blood from their mouths, the forbidden food from between their teeth. Those who are left will belong to our God and become a clan in Judah, and Ekron will be like the Jebusites. But I will encamp at my temple to guard it against marauding forces. Never again will an oppressor overrun my people, for now I am keeping watch. Remember when we talked about the Philistines and how they had these main cities, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gaza, Ekron, and Gath. And remember, they could control that Via Maris, where it was the trade route there. So it was really a problem. They were big people, and they were very powerful. Remember, Goliath was from the Philistines, was Philistine. Now, David had an interesting relationship with the Philistines, didn't he? Because they were he beat Goliath, but he also kind of played a shadow game when he was being chased by what's his name, Saul. Yeah, so they had an interesting there, but the Philistines are going to be gone. That's what God says, and that's what happened. And speaking of Aram, Tyre, and Sidon, and speaking of Philistines at the time of David, is Zechariah evoking these past events to foreshadow future events? Why is he talking about these? Why is he bringing these up? It seems to be the case when we start reading on verse 9, Zechariah 9:9. Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. Verse 10, I will take away the chariots from Ephraim and the war horses from Jerusalem, and the battle bow will be broken. He will proclaim peace to the nations. His rule will extend from sea to sea, from the river to the ends of the earth. Do you remember what Zechariah said about the branch in chapter 3?
Yeah.
Listen, high priest Joshua, you and your associates seated before you, who are men symbolic of things to come. I'm going to bring my servant, the branch, the stone I have set in front of Joshua. There are 7 eyes on that one stone, and I will engrave an inscription on it, says the Lord Almighty, and I will remove the sin of this land in a single day. In that day, each of you will invite your neighbor to sit under your vine and fig tree, declares the Lord Almighty. So the oracle was addressed to Joshua the high priest and the company of priests who, now cleansed, are to be the signs of the coming Yahweh's servant, the branch, a metaphor for a future Davidic king, one who sprouts from the stump of Jesse. Israel's self-identity was established at Mount Sinai in Exodus 19:5. If the first word in Exodus 19 is, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. So Israel would be a magnet for all people in the world, a beacon in the darkness, a bright shining light, is what Isaiah was saying. Isaiah says, arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. See, darkness covers the earth, and thick darkness is over the peoples, but the Lord rises upon you, and his glory appears over you. Nations will come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. Lift up your eyes and look about you. All assemble and come to you. Your sons come from afar, and your daughters are carried on their hip. So that was Israel's destiny, one in which they placed complete hope. But the covenant had an if-then clause. If you obey me completely and keep my covenant, then you will be a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. But Israel didn't obey God completely. Israel turned its back on God over and over again, and Israel suffered the consequences. And we saw this in the history of the kings, that the fall of the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. But the Jews clung to the hope that one day God's promise would be fulfilled, that one day Israel and Mount Zion would be like a magnet, that bright and shining light, that hope for all humanity. They failed to achieve it. But now they are back and they're rebuilding. Maybe now it will happen. Now they have hope for the future. Christ, the branch, provided the path to God and salvation for all peoples, including the Israelites. The branch would proclaim peace to the nations, and his dominion would be from sea to sea. We read that in Zechariah. From the Euphrates to the ends of the earth, they rebuilt Jerusalem and the temple, but of course the Romans destroyed it in 70 AD. Israel would not be back as a nation until May 1948, 1,876 years later. Mm-hmm. Christians argue that Jesus was the branch. Matthew 21, as they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethpage on the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, go to the village ahead of you, and at once you will find a donkey tied there, with her colt by her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, say that the Lord needs them, and he will send them right away. This took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. Say to daughter Zion, see, your king comes to you gentle and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. That's pretty clear prophecy and fulfillment right there. The disciples went and did as Jesus had instructed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and placed their cloaks on them for Jesus to sit on. A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, while others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. The crowds that went ahead of him and those that followed shouted, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heaven. When Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred and asked, who is this? The crowd answered, this is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee.
That's what I was talking about Wednesday night. Blessed is he.
Yes.
This is a triumph.
Yes.
Interesting.
Every single first century Jew in Jerusalem would have known prophet Zechariah's writings. And when Jesus entered the city, just as he did, they knew exactly what that was communicating. Zechariah speaks clearly of an eschatological king, and a half a millennium later, Jesus claims to be him. So this is a long time from the time that Zechariah spoke this or wrote this. Zechariah 9, verse 11. As for you, because of the blood of my covenant with you, I will free your prisoners from the waterless pit. Return to your fortress, you prisoners of hope. Even now I announce that I will restore twice as much to you. I will bend Judah as I bend my bow and fill it with Ephraim. I will rouse your sons, Zion, against your sons, Greece, and make you like a warrior's sword. Then the Lord will appear over them. His arrow will flash like lightning. The sovereign Lord will sound the trumpet. He will march in the storms of the south, and the Lord Almighty will shield them. They will destroy and overcome with sling stones. They will drink and roar as with wine. They will be full like a bowl used for sprinkling the corners of the altar. The Lord their God will save his people on that day as a shepherd saves his flock. They will sparkle in his land like jewels in a crown. How attractive and beautiful they will be. Grain will make the young men thrive, and the new wine the young woman. So with the coming of the branch, the people themselves are going to be restored. Jeremiah and Ezekiel are railing against the false prophets of their day. Zechariah envisions false prophets in the years leading up to this future time also, this eschatological future. False prophets who would continue to lead the people astray. So that's what he's warning against. Don't believe what those false prophets are saying. Stay with the true word of God. Chapter 10. Ask the Lord for rain in the springtime. It is the Lord who sends the thunderstorms. He gives showers of rain to all people and plants of the field to everyone. The idols speak deceitfully. Diviners see visions that lie. They tell dreams that are false. They give comfort in vain. Therefore the people wander like sheep oppressed for lack of a shepherd. My anger burns against the shepherds, and I will punish the leaders, for the Lord Almighty will care for his flock, the people of Judah, and make them like a proud horse in battle. From Judah will come the cornerstone, from him the tent peg, from him the battle bow, from him every ruler. Together they will be like warriors in battle, trampling their enemy into the mud of the streets. They will fight because the Lord is with them, and they will put the enemy horsemen to shame. I will strengthen Judah and save the tribes of Joseph. I will restore them because I have compassion on them. They will be as though I had not rejected them, for I am the Lord their God, and I will answer them. The Ephraimites will become like warriors, and their hearts will be glad as with wine. Their children will see it and be joyful. Their hearts will rejoice in the Lord. I will signal for them and gather them in. Surely I will redeem them. They will be as numerous as before. Though I scatter them among the peoples, yet in distant lands, they will remember me. They and their children will survive, and they will return. I will bring them back from Egypt and gather them from Assyria. I will bring them to Gilead and Lebanon, and there will not be room enough for them. They will pass through the sea of trouble. The surging sea will be subdued, and all the depths of the Nile will dry up. Assyria's pride will be brought down, and Egypt's scepter will pass away. I will strengthen them in the Lord. In his name they will live securely, declares the Lord. That's a mighty powerful promise, isn't it? Well, next we come to a puzzling prophecy. The leaders are pictured as shepherds who buy, sell, and devour the sheep, the people. This is an allegory, but who is the good shepherd and who are the bad ones? That's what we're going to sort out. First is a commissioning scene as God commissions the prophets to shepherd the flock to be slaughtered. God is disgusted with the people. He has taken his hands off of them. Zechariah 11. Open your doors, Lebanon, so that fire may devour your cedars. Wail, you juniper, for the cedar has fallen, the stately trees are ruined. Wail, oaks of Bashan, the defense forest has been cut down. Listen to the wail of the shepherds. Their rich pastures are destroyed. Listen to the roar of the lions. The lush thicket of the Jordan is ruined. So God is disgusted with his people, and he's taken his hands off. This is what the Lord my God says. Shepherd the flock marked for slaughter. Their buyers slaughter them and go unpunished. Those who sell them say, praise the Lord, I'm rich. Their own shepherds do not spare them. For I will no longer have pity on the people of the land, declares the Lord. I will give everyone into the hands of their neighbors and their king. They will devastate the land, and I will not rescue anyone from their hands. So I shepherded the flock marked for slaughter, particularly the oppressed of the flock. Then I took two staffs and called one favor and the other union. Okay, so the favor one is the delight, or the one you, so that's the Mosaic covenant, the covenant that they're in. Union is the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. He's putting Israel and Judah together into one tribe. That's the union. So the stick that's called delight represents the Mosaic covenant, and the stick called union, the two sticks, that represents the two sticks of the northern and the southern people. Verse 7, so I shepherded the flock marked for slaughter, particularly the oppressed of the flock. Then I took two staffs, called one favor and the other union, and I shepherded the flock. In 1 month I got rid of the 3 shepherds. The flock detested me, and I grew weary of them, and said, I will not be your shepherd. Let the dying die, and the perishing perish. Let those who are left eat one another's flesh. Yuck. So the 3 shepherds are 3 leaders, perhaps 3 false prophets or a combination of both, responsible for leading people. Those who care nothing for the people, but only for their own power, wealth, and prestige. They're not caring for the people. They're punishing the people, basically, using them to kill and make money off of. Instead of taking care of the flock and growing it, they're just going to sell it, eat it, whatever they're going to do. They're going to get rid of it. They're not caring for it or growing the flock. Then I took my staff called favor and broke it, revoking the covenant I had made with all the nations. It was revoked on that day, and so the oppressed of the flock who were watching me knew it was the word of the Lord. I told them, if you think it best, give me my pay, but if not, keep it. So they paid me 30 pieces of silver. And the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, that's the treasury, the treasury that's in the temple, the handsome price at which they valued me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them to the potter, the treasury, at the house of the Lord. So we went through that whole thing going, oh, what about the sheep? But really, this is the piece that really makes a difference, doesn't it? The good shepherd, our prophet, is contemptuously valued at 30 pieces of silver. How much is the value of 30 pieces of silver? Well, a slave. In Exodus 21, now just so you get the rules right, in case you have a bull who gores someone, you might want to know this. If a bull gores a man or a woman to death, the bull is to be stoned to death, and its meat must not be eaten. But the owner of the bull will not be held responsible. If, however, the bull has had the habit of going and the owner has been warned, but has not kept it pinned up, and it kills a man or woman, the bull is to be stoned, and its owner also is to be put to death. However, if payment is demanded, the owner may redeem his life by the payment of whatever is demanded. This law also applies if the bull gores a son or daughter. If the bull gores a male or female slave, the owner must pay 30 shekels of silver to the master of the slave, and the bull is to be stoned to death.
Doesn't matter about the others, just the
Not the others, yeah. But if the slave and the 30 pieces of silver would be like nothing. It's like a pittance, the price of a gored slave. And our prophet is contemptuously flings the money into the temple treasury.
And look what Judas did.
Yeah.
Of course, Christians immediately recognize the gospel. Matthew 27:3. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed innocent blood. What is that to us? They replied. That's your responsibility. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. And it's kind of interesting here on this part. And the Lord said, throw it to the treasury. It's not interesting.
Yeah.
That they would be that clearly foreshadowed, because it's not like wouldn't you expect him to say give it to the priest or put it in the treasury, but to say specifically to throw it into the treasury. Cast it away. That's kind of interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very clear parallel. We're almost done. Then I broke my second staff called Union, breaking the family bond between Judah and Israel. Remember, Ezekiel had prophesied resurrection of all Israel in his vision of the valley of dry bones. Remember, all of Israel's going to come together, and the bones will become flesh, and they'll rise up. Ezekiel symbolized this by taking the 2 sticks, one labeled Judah and one Ephraim, and joining them together. That's how he symbolized that. Ezekiel 37 says, the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, take a stick of wood and write on it belonging to Judah, and the Israelites associated with him. Then take another stick of wood and write on it belonging to Joseph, that is Ephraim, and all the Israelites associated with him. Join them together into one stick so that they become one in your hand. That was Ezekiel. When your people ask you, won't you tell us what you mean by this? Say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am going to take the stick of Joseph, which is in Ephraim's hand, and of the Israelite tribes associated with them, and join it to Judah's stick. I will make them into a single stick of wood, and they will become one in my hand. Hold before their eyes the sticks you have written on, and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will take the Israelites out of the nations where they have gone. I will gather them from all around and bring them back into their own land. I will make them one nation in the land on the mountain of Israel. There will be one king over all of them, and they will never again be two nations or be divided into two kingdoms. They will no longer defile themselves with their idols and vile images or with any of their offenses, for I will save them from all their sinful backsliding, and I will cleanse them. They will be my people, and I will be their God. My servant David will be king over them, and they will have one shepherd. They will follow my laws and be careful to keep my decrees. They will live in the land I gave to my servant Jacob, the land where your ancestors lived. They and their children's children will live there forever. And David, my servant, will be their prince forever. I will make a covenant of peace with them. It will be an everlasting covenant. I will establish them and increase their numbers, and I will put my sanctuary among them forever. My dwelling place will be with them. I will be their God, and they will be my people. Then the nations will know that I, the Lord, make Israel holy, when my sanctuary is among them forever. So that's an optimistic prophecy in Ezekiel back in the 590s. And with the return from Babylon in 539 and the rebuilding of the temple, many of the Jerusalem leaders are embracing Ezekiel's prophecies and base their leadership claims on it. But Zechariah has a different view. He sees Israel's leaders as utterly corrupt, its prophets as phonies, and its people as failing into the same old patterns that they had of sin. So he breaks the sticks and separates Israel and Judah. And Ezekiel gives us a message of hope, and Zechariah sees a united staff being broken, and he gives a message of doom. So Zechariah's second burden or prophecy, the nations will attack Jerusalem, and God will shield it, but not without consequence. And that's where we will start next time, on Zechariah 11, starting at verse 15. That's where we'll be. We may be able to go into Malachi and at least introduce Malachi, so we'll see next week. But there's a few more kind of key passages that link to New Testament stuff in Zechariah that I think you're going to be interested in. So we'll finish out Zechariah. Any questions?